Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I am a voice teacher. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about breathing and how that works for singing so that you can start playing around with it in your own voice and figure out what works for you. So the first thing that I want you to do is just put your hands on your stomach and blow out all your air, all the way out. And then it's all the way out and out, and then relax. And what happens is when you relax, your body creates a vacuum and air just wants to fill in there. What happens if you start trying to force air, if you gasp for air or go, is you create some tension in your abs. Usually your abs or your obliques or your back somewhere just holds a little bit of tension, and it makes it harder for the air to create that vacuum. So what's a lot easier is just to, after you void yourself of all the air, just relax and have your body just fill up with air like that. And when you do that, if you just are relaxing all of your muscles to allow this vacuum to fill, that makes it so that your diaphragm can drop a little bit better. So your diaphragm is this big pancake-shaped muscle that connects to your ribs. And when you inhale, if everything is working well and you're relaxed, then that diaphragm is allowed to drop. And that's why you might feel it come out in your stomach or in your sides. Another thing to do is the exact same exercise, but monitoring what your ribs do. So blow out all your air, and you might feel them collapse a little bit. That's okay. And then relax. And then if you did it right, if you did it in the way that's pretty released, your ribs should spring open a little bit as your lungs fill up with air. They just come out a little bit. And that's pretty much it, is just being aware of that. Now, as you're exhaling for singing, or just for breathing and everything, try not to collapse your ribs. So one thing that's helpful is to think about your spine lengthening as you're on the exhale. So whether that's breathing out through a phrase or whether it's just breathing in conversation, we just don't want everything to kind of collapse every time and then breathe and come back here and then it's coming a little bit more and collapsing and then we breathe and it's fine. So it's mostly just keeping that nice, relaxed, open feeling that you have on the inhale as you're breathing out. So try that with me again. Just blow out all your air. Good. So after you do that and you get used to what it feels like to breathe low without very much resistance, the next thing is learning how to control your airflow. Because there are two parts of breathing. There's the inhale and there's the exhale. In singing, we want to control the exhale so that it's a really constant amount of air going through. And usually not a ton of air. It's just a small, consistent, fast stream of air. So one thing that you can do to play around with that kind of resistance is breathing out on an S. So if you do that same exercise, breathe out, and then relax, and then out on an S. And as you're doing that, and you're breathing out on an S, and I hope that you can hold it for a while, see if your airflow is inconsistent, because if there is an inconsistency in your airflow, that's something that we kind of need to work on. And the S is really nice because you can feel exactly how much air is coming through with this. If you press into it really hard, you'll feel a lot of pressure coming back, like we don't want that. It's just a little bit of compression, just a little bit of resistance. Just consistent. And as you're doing this, pay attention to what your ribs feel like. So you can monitor your ribs while you're doing this and monitor your spine to make sure that everything's not collapsing. Because that's one of the main things that would make breathing out a little bit inconsistent, is if you start collapsing, because then your ribs are pushing down on your lungs and it just messes everything up. So just try to get a very, very smooth exhale on the S. And you should be able to hold that for 30 seconds to a minute, pretty easy, once you get used to this feeling of not collapsing. And if you're not able to get it that much, just check if you're dumping a lot of air at your mouth. Like if you're doing a because then all your air is going to be gone, or if it's pushing somehow, just back off on the volume, back off on the feeling of pushing into it, and just see if you can get a very small just so a teeny amount of air is coming all the way through. Another thing that you can do with this to sense how much air is getting out is get a cup and fill it with water, and then get a regular drinking straw, put that in the cup about halfway down, and then blow bubbles. Because that same thing happens where the water and the straw give resistance, just like you were doing with the S. But then you have a visual representation of how much air is coming through, because if you start volcanoing, that means you're adding a little bit too much air. And if you're not getting any bubbles, that means you're probably not getting enough air. So it's just finding a very smooth amount of air in the bubbles. So once you get used to that feeling of just small amount of air coming through, then we need to start phonating, which is buzzing through our vocal cords so that we start making sound. So take that same relaxed breath, exhale everything just to make sure that it's clear, and then relax into a breath. The S and the Z should be pretty similar, in that when you start going on the Z, it shouldn't get a lot breathier, or it shouldn't get more intense. Try to keep the same breath pressure that you had with the S when you start vibrating into a Z, and see if you can turn it on and off, like without buzzing more or increasing anything. Just don't change anything as we go back and forth between this. The only real point of starting from breath is to start building habits that are using the most efficient muscles. And if you start changing things and making it hard with breath, then it's hard to add things on in the next steps. But if you're able to just get a really nice, easy inhale that you feel going into your stomach because you're letting your diaphragm drop and because you're not collapsing anything, that's a really good start. And then it's just buzzing and making sure that you don't change anything. So after you start just being able to turn off and on the buzz, the phonation, then the next step would be trying to just slide around with it. So go. And this is so good for me because I just woke up, so I am not doing things very well. This brings my attention back to how it feels to keep an even airflow. And it started by like just being a little bit weird, and it felt odd. And so now I just need to bring it back, try to ask for the same feeling I had with the S, because the S felt good. And my focus is on trying to keep the airflow moving the same amount, which is manifested by keeping the Z the same all the way through, rather than getting a more intense Z or a breathier Z, just holding on to that Z. So once you get used to that, try doing it on some different songs. So if we were doing it on Happy Birthday, it would go zzz. And that time I was collapsing all the way through, so I messed it up, but I became aware of it. And that's part of the purpose of a warm-up, is to become aware of kind of what your tendencies are that day. So if I was to do that again, I would try to become a little bit more aware of keeping my shoulders back, my spine straight, not collapsing my ribs. And that just feels a lot better. I'm not like running out of air at the end of it because I haven't been hemorrhaging air the whole way through. So that's a really good place to start your warm-up, is just focusing on making sure that you're not holding anywhere with your breath, or that it's not like you're holding while you're exhaling, because if you start flexing too much, then it gets this really tough sound. But if you relax, then you can allow your breath to move a little bit more smoothly, and it doesn't start stacking tension. So good breathing is just what pretty much everyone does all the time. When a baby is first born, they take a big breath and then they breathe out and they make sound. And that's how we know that they're okay, is are they able to do that? And so this is not something that is out of anyone's reach, really. I mean, as long as, assuming that you don't have any like holes in your diaphragm or anything that's going on kind of weird, this is just built into people, is how to breathe and then how to slow that breath. Because when you sing, or when you first cried the first time, it's not like you're dumping breath most of the time. It's just wah, it's pretty smooth, but the air is going out. The whole point is to try to strip away all of this tension so that you can let your body work in a way that's very simple and easy and controlled. And so I hope that some of these exercises helped you figure out a little bit more what breathing feels like so that you can start adjusting it in your singing so that it meets your goals. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Go share with your friends if you think that they learned something from this video. And stay tuned for more of my Basics of Singing series.